Good morning, and welcome to the festival's Legacy Series featuring Tova Friedman, hosted by storyteller Corrine Stavish. This year's Legacy Series is made possible through the generosity of Wallace and Catherine Sheely. We are so grateful. Please refrain from photography and recording during the session. Note that the emergency doors are behind you to the right and left, and take a moment now to silence your cell phones. Please welcome your host, Corrine Stavish.
Shalom. Today is the last day of the cycle of the Jewish New Year that began with Rosh Hashanah, these holy days, these days of awe. It's called Simchas Torah, the joy of the Torah, because yesterday we read in Shul the last chapter of Deuteronomy, which closes the Hebrew Torah. The rabbis preach about the Torah, turn it and turn it and turn it again, because every time you read it, you find something new. Tova Friedman has a story that no matter how many times you hear it, you will always find something new. And today, we are privileged to have her share her story with us. Please give a warm welcome to Tova Friedman.
Thank you very much. And I'm really, really happy. It's my last time this season that I'm talking to you. And I'm so glad to share with another group of people because it's important to me, and you'll see how it'll become important to you. Yes, today is our last day of the holiday. And if I were in New Jersey, where I come from, I would be in the temple. I'm an observant Jew, and I had a lot of trouble thinking about, am I going to speak in public? I'm driving, I'm taking a plane. I'm not supposed to do all that. I'm supposed to sit in temple and pray and dance with the Torah. And then I had a talk with God, and I said, what am I going to do? I mean, I don't know what to do. I have a chance to tell my story. On the other hand, I really be in the temple. And I got sort of an answer. And it was sort of, when you sit in a temple, you just talk about yourself and your family. When you go out there, you're a witness. You're a witness to what happened. And that's where you belong. And we have very few witnesses. He said, I have very few witnesses because they're all in Florida. So go ahead. And don't feel guilt, although I will atone later on. But right now, I feel comfortable in doing it. Yes, I am one of the last witnesses, because by pure luck, I survived when I'm not supposed to survive. I survived, and I wasn't supposed to have a family, and yet, because I had 4 children and 8 grandchildren. That means through me, through a tiny bit, the Jewish people are surviving. When Hitler wanted us all killed, and you should see us only in museums. Now let me tell you, from my hometown, there were 15,000 Jews, beginning of the war. It was a town, Tomaszow Mazowiecki. I'm saying the words. I know you won't pronounce it, and you won't even know where it is, but I'm saying it because there's nobody left in that town, not a single Jew. Even our cemetery has been desecrated. You can't even, I went to try to see it. First, nobody takes care of it. And then what's there is like, I know my great-grandfather's graves were there because my family came from that town for 200 years. I couldn't find anything. Everything was like rotten, and maybe animals were there. So I'm the only witness. Out of the 15,000 Jews that lived there, my father, my mother, their families, they had sports, they had movies, they had theater. It was a very cultured town. 200 came back. All the rest were murdered in many different ways. You know, murder comes through hunger, starvation, diseases, and so forth. There were hundreds and hundreds of children because they were Orthodox Jews. My family comes from many rabbis. My mother's family had 150 close family. I'm not even talking, extended family. I'm talking brothers and sisters and their children, 150. Not a single person survived. She was the only one. And she died very early because she couldn't live with that thought. So she died when I was 18 and she was 45. So my father had 8 brothers and sisters. Most of them were killed. So that who's going to tell the story? The children, all those hundreds of children. 5 were left. 5 of us came back. 5 kids came back from hundreds and hundreds of children. They were all killed. I was 2 years old. In 1940, when the Germans came to our town, the first thing they did, they killed all the children. There was this plan. It was a master plan. It was carried out in every single camp, every single ghetto. It was, if you went to one ghetto and you had certain experiences, there'll be the same experiences in a different ghetto because they planned everything. They had geniuses planning the destruction of the Jewish people. How do you kill a people? The first thing you do, you destroy their families. So they destroyed the families. They killed the children and they killed the elderly. They also destroyed them because they were useless. Children were just a burden. They have to be fed and they got sick. So the parents couldn't go to work very often. And the elderly, what are they good for? What are we good for? After 50, 60 years old, we can't work hard. So we also may get sick. Kill them. So the 2 populations were killed within less than a year. Now this happened very quickly, maybe even before a year. Within a few months, the children were killed, and the elderly were killed. All the teachers were killed. All the rabbis were killed. All the doctors were killed. They destroyed what is called the intelligentsia. Those that keep a community going, the intellectuals, the thinkers, the ones when you have a problem. In those days, when you had a problem, you went to the rabbi, and the rabbi helped you decide this to do or that to do. Gone. You had Jewish doctors. All thing was gone, and they took us all and they put us into a ghetto. Now, the ghetto was not only the 15,000 people from our town. They brought people from other towns. So the ghetto had maybe 20,000 people, all living in a terribly small area. Because in order to kill people, you have to know where they are. You can't allow them to hide or to go somewhere, and you can't allow them to leave the premises. So you had a fence around it. And I must tell you, it was a live fence in the beginning. A lot of Ukrainians were there, a lot of Germans, some Poles, and they were surrounding us. The only way you could come in and out of the ghetto was with special papers, work papers. Work papers was the passport for survival, but survival for only a few more months. You weren't guaranteed more than that. So we live in this ghetto, and I want to tell you, you're going to wonder, and everybody, and I wonder, how come I remember so much? is because I had an unusual mother who told me everything. She spoke to me, she spoke to me, she spoke to me, she spoke to me. Every time something happened, I said, what's going on? She told me the truth. So I witnessed the death of my grandmother. They came into our ghetto room, which was extraordinarily crowded, and which I spent my time under the table because there was no space. And it was also safe for me. I was a child, so the less I was seen, the better. But they came in, took my grandma and my mother's mom, and shot her. Didn't even take it to the cemetery. Sometimes they would take the people to the Jewish cemetery and just shoot them there and leave the bodies around. But this time they just shot her outside. My parents didn't protect me from that. I must have been about 3 years old. Now you wonder, you have children, I have children. 3-year-old child? How can a child remember that? You can, because they're different type of experiences. They're the kind of experiences that even if your mind isn't sure, your body absorbs it. You hear it. You hear the noise. You hear the shooting. And after that, my father came in one day, and that I was already 4.5. But four. How do I know? Because I was standing at the table. I got out from under the table, and I was standing near it, and the table came up to here to me. I mean, that's how a child remembers, right? And I remember my parents sitting on both sides of the table, and my father said, I just put them on the truck. He put his elderly parents, who could not have been more than 50 years old. My father was in the late 20s. Okay, 50, maybe 45, 50. He put them on the truck. They were going to the place where they were shooting all elderly. See, they made it easy for themselves. The able-bodied people, like my father, would dig the graves. And I, as a child, knew when he went to dig those graves, because those graves were made for two populations, either the children or the elderly. And they didn't mix, by the way. Everything was very organized, all the elderly. And they did it everywhere. You stood, one of the big things was nakedness. When you take away the clothes, people are not the same people when you walk around naked in front of everybody. There's no shame. Why should we be ashamed? Are animals ashamed? Is a cow ashamed? No. Well, we became animals. We didn't have to have any, so we were walking naked, but that's me later on. But here, my grandparents. So they were shot, and there was in the back, there was a whole row of elderly facing away from the guns, and they were shot in the back. What did they do with the clothing? They collected those clothes, and they had them, and people like my mom would wash them and iron and fix them because they were sent back to Germany for the German population. Those people just didn't have enough clothes. I mean, after all, so they used our clothes. And that was collected not only from adults, but from children. So let me just go later, you can ask questions. I have a lot to say, but I'm just going to get you the highlights so you get the feeling of what it is. Because knowing that 6 million people died and 1.5 million children, it's statistics. Statistics. My God, what's 1 million? I can't even figure that out. But one person, multiply it by 1 million, 1.5 million. Because what happened to me happened to other children. I was lucky. I wasn't chosen. I wasn't chosen by God or by whatever, the powers that be, to tell the story. That's nonsense. Because what made me special when those other babies, children, 1.5 million of, some of them were like still nursing. What did they do to be taken either to, what they would do to children? They were nursing. They would tear them apart. They would throw them against a wall to make it easier, not to waste a bullet. So what did these children sin that they were condemned to death and I stayed alive? So I want to tell you, it was luck. And I'll show you how. I feel like there was so much luck in my life. And you know, and because of that, I feel I must talk to you. And I must speak for those children that aren't here. I mean, can you imagine 1.5 million of young souls? They're usually from the age of 0 to the age of 11, because at the age of 12, you were considered workers. So many of us who have very weird birth certificates now because the age isn't correct. The parents try to, they kept taking everybody to the age of 10, so they made their kid 11 and 12. But they checked you. If you were a child that at the age of 11 and you weren't tall and strong, you were shot. If you were a child of 10 and you happened to be tall, you could pass. The idea that every single parent tried to pass the children because then the children could go to work. And they would work 10, 12 hours in factories, but they were alive for a little bit. So let me go quickly. The ghetto was taken. There was hardly any people left. Most of them were sent to concentration camps. The elderly who were left, the children who were left, then they decided even the workers, they don't need so many workers. They have enough from different countries, from different places, from Hungary. We were in Poland, so there were people from Hungary, people from Czechoslovakia. They had enough. So they started killing people the age of like my father's and my mother's. There was almost nobody left in the ghetto, and they decided to clean it. What do? They left a cleaning squad, which was, again, another luck. We weren't killed. We were in the cleaning squad. So I and my mom, men were busy doing other things. We went from barrack to barrack and cleaned it up. There shouldn't be one spot of blood left. Sometimes we found people who had died, or elderly people who died from starvation or from a disease. Typhus was rampant. Sometimes we found children hidden in blankets. They were shot until the ghetto looked. If the Red Cross would come, nothing. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Before they chose 40, 50 people to stay alive, they shot everybody. They told us all to go near the church. Again, the church, So we were by the church, and my mother was holding me like that, and they were shooting, and again, somehow I escaped the shooting. They took all of us who were left, 50 people and some children, into the next place. There was the Starchowice, about 50, 60 miles away, in a truck. There was only one purpose for that camp. It was work. My parents got up very early in the morning, went to a factory, came home very late at night, and with the kids, there weren't many. Most of them had been killed before, maybe 20, 30, I don't know how many kids. We roamed the streets, being watched by Germans, because this camp had a barbed wire around it, and there were 4 towers. And on those towers were soldiers with machine guns watching us. And my mother began to teach me, survival skills. No eye contact. Don't look at anybody in the eye, because eye means recognition. Stand still when you see a German coming, because the tendency was that I see a German with a dog, the German shepherd, I'll run. No. If you run, the dogs will kill you. She taught me every morning before she left. She practiced with me. So I would stay safe when she wasn't around. I was 5, and I learned. One day, all the children were taken. I told you, there were no more elderly left in that camp. No elderly, and just some children. All the children. There was the selection of the children. Well, my mother or father heard about it, and they hid me in a crawl space that we had in our little room. From the window, I saw all those kids that I played with gone. And I said to myself, I'm the last Jewish child left. I don't know why I thought like that, but I did. I didn't know anything about other children. I didn't even know what being Jewish was. I just said, Jewish has to be killed. Well, I'm the only Jewish child left. And my mother had my hand on my mouth very, very tightly. I shouldn't cry out, which I wouldn't have. But my whole mouth everything was swollen for weeks afterwards. That's how tightly she held it. Then she said to me, you can't go on the street anymore the way you used to. We're leaving in the morning. I'm going to lock you up. My mother locked me up in a room, put a very heavy blanket on the window. And I stayed there for weeks in complete and utter darkness. I have all kinds of things to tell you what I thought, but I can't do it now. The good thing was that I thought to myself, a worm? My parents are not far away. I am not on the wagons where they took the children and shot them somewhere outside, because the day before my father had dug a grave with other able-bodied men. So these were some of my thoughts, besides the fear, but it was just that I'm here. One day, she said to me, you don't need to stay anymore. I walked out, and she was packing. I was very happy to be out. And I said, where are we going? What are you packing? She says, we're going to Auschwitz. This is when the difference between being human and inhuman. We got on the cattle car. Men and women were separated. And I remember standing with lots of women, the only child. I didn't know it was 36 hours. I found out later. Without water, without food, hardly any air, because has anybody been to Auschwitz at all? Did you see the cattle car? It's a big thing, and on the very top, it has like a little grate window. That was it, about like this, like that. And there was grates on it. So they did a little air. So it was dark for me because I was small and all these women were there. And I remember only wanting to go to the toilet. It wasn't even the thirst, which I was very thirsty, but going to the bathroom. You were still human. I was taught you don't go to the bathroom on your street, Well, we had to. I realized everybody went to the bathroom. People had diarrhea. People were dying. The adults, the people who were there, the women, some of them have been sick already. You could die of fright because they knew it was their very last trip on earth. And that's how we were. I was standing, because there was no room. You couldn't sit down. We were very, very tight. My mother had her hand around me. Then we arrived, and the first thing I saw were the dogs. They still are, by the way. The German Shepherd has always been very, very tough for me. We arrived, and we got undressed. Again, just like they would do to the shooting part, undressed, nakedness. All of us, all the women, I was with the women. And I said to my mom, what's the smell? What is smell? Now, I came from a place that smelled terribly. 36 hours of people vomiting and diarrhea and feces, and dead people. But that smell was different. Different smells. My mother saw the chimney, and she said, and I knew what she said, they were burning human beings, and I could smell it. All of Auschwitz was permeated for the rest of my stay there with that smell, and sometimes you see like black soot from the bodies all over the place, but that smell was there. And when I got undressed, I said to her, why are they undressing us? She says, they're checking to see if we're healthy. And I saw men looking, to this side, all these women. Men were German SS or whoever they were in uniforms, checking all the orifices to see if everybody is healthy. Those that weren't healthy were taken straight to the crematorium. So, but somehow we passed. We walked naked to a room where we were given some clothing because my clothes was already taken away. They took those clothes again and they put it in a place called Canada, which is a place where they did cleaning and washing. Again, those clothes, because they were normal clothing still. I still had clothes from my parents bought before even the war started or whatever. It was only, they were sending them to the German children who had to have our clothes. So they took it away, went into a room, and they gave me something to wear. I don't know, whatever it was, some kind of old shoes, and they shaved me. All the women were shaved. I remember looking for my mom. They separated me. I was so little that they put me on a bench to shave me. The woman who shaved me was a Jewish woman, and she looks at me and she says, "You poor child." I don't know what language, it must have been Polish, but I don't know Polish anymore. But I remember her saying to me, "You poor child." And she took my braids, and then I couldn't find my mom because, hair is such a distinct part of our lives. She had different clothes and different, no hair. So, but she found me. I felt her hands on my bald head, and she says, "Come." Took my hand. Now, she knew the orders. I didn't know what they were saying. And she took me into the barrack. This was before we even entered into Auschwitz-Birkenau. We went in. We had a barrack, a middle barrack. She helped me up. And then she began teaching me again the rules of that place. And let me tell you, I listened. The first thing, you can't go to the bathroom. For kids, going to the bathroom is very difficult. It has to be done in a positive way. She said, you can't go to the bathroom when you want. You'll go only with the adults, twice a day. I said, what if I need to go in between? She says, you won't be able to. You'll be shut. You'll learn to hold it in. And I did. I didn't say anything. And then she said, here, you're going to be getting a cup, a tin cup, a cup and a bowl, and a spoon. This is your food. You're going to go in line, and they're going to give you food. If you lose them, if somebody steals them, you'll starve to death. She explained it to me, and she said, because the people who are giving you the food don't know who you are. You just see your hand, and they see the cup. Somebody can steal it, and they can have 2 cups, and they get soup twice, and you won't have anything. I learned not to go to the bathroom. Nobody would steal my cup. At that age, I knew life and death. Nobody. I hid my cup, I remember, in those blankets. Then she said, a lot of people are going to sleep with us. More women joined I called it like the shelf, like a shelf. She said, listen, when you go to sleep at night, try not to move too much, because if you move, everybody else has to move. And I learned. These were nothing. These were orders from my mom. And her words to me were the rules by what I will live until the end of Auschwitz. And I learned how to do that. And then she said, when we go outside to be counted, first, you see, they kept us, first the ghetto, so they knew where we were. Then we had the bands with the Jewish star. And then when you come to Auschwitz, you were being tattooed. But at this moment, we weren't tattooed yet. So she said, we're going to be outside, they're going to call us, and they're going to count us. Well, some of the counting went on and on and on, 4 or 5 hours. You stood outside, and one of the times I got so fidgety. I tried not to be ever in the front, be in the back, but somehow I ended up in the front, and all I did was I remember moving just a little bit. My mother standing next to me, a German, a woman. I know people kept telling me there were no women SS, Gestapo. I said, no, don't tell me there weren't women. And I knew between a difference, and she was wearing a skirt. She was wearing everything else, the hat, the belt, but she had a skirt. Well, people said it's your childish memory. It couldn't happen. I looked it up on the internet. There were women there. I swore that there were women there. There weren't many. On the internet, they even have their names. I said, I know. This woman grabbed me out of the line, and she said to me, you better learn how to stand still. And she started hitting me. And remember going just like that. Obedience. My mother taught me obedience. And she hit me so much, her hand got all red. My cheeks were swollen. You know what my thoughts were? Go ahead. Hit me as much as you want. Kill me. You'll never know how much you hurt me. It was a feeling of I learned that if they see how much power they have over you, they will enjoy it more. I would not allow, even at 5.5 by then, to let this woman enjoy her hitting me. She got so tired, she pushed me back in line and said, next time you don't move. Within a very short time, I got sick. I have diphtheria, scarlet fever. My mother told me that after the war. I didn't know anything about diseases, but I knew that if you are sick, you die. Every time they came every day to check any weak person, straight to the gas chamber. They used to come with lorries and come inside the barracks and have the lorries waiting outside, like 4 wheels. I think they called lorries. I don't know what they called. I know it in Polish, that word. I don't know in English. I think it's a lorry. And they would take the sick people onto them and straight to the gas chamber. Well, I was getting so ill, I couldn't see. I had pus. Even my mother didn't know. And then she had to find out. She saw me, so they came. Somebody said, this is a sick child here. She may infect us all. I was taken away to a hospital without doctors. Door was closed. I remember that. I don't remember what happened inside because I must have a lot of fever. I just remember coming out, and some woman came, and she said to me, okay, get dressed. And she gave me a pair of shoes with laces. I didn't know how to put on a pair of shoes, how to lace anything. And I remember she said to me, a girl of 5.5 should know how to lace her shoes by now. Oh, I was 5.5. I had no idea. I had no idea how I looked even. I said, I want my mom. She said, no, you're done, finished. Took my hand, walked with me to, the camp was very big. Those who've been there, you know how big that camp is. Miles and miles. I don't know how much we walked, and we came to a place that was the children, Kinderslage. And because they had just killed 400,000 gypsies. They had burned all of them, gassed every one of them. And they had room for children. And I met children. I thought I was the only child. I was sort of delighted. Oh, I children my age, all kind. The first thing they did when I arrived, they told us to stand on line. And line to me meant food. I said, oh, I want to be the first on line. I want to go. I want to eat, but then I was starving because my mom would give me her piece of her bread. She wasn't around anymore. So I got online to find out that there's a tattooing line. So I got up there And this lovely woman, she was 18, 19. Now I know what she was. I had no idea who she was because she was so old. I knew she was Jewish. And she said to me very gently, I'm going to give you a number. What's your name? I told her. She said, forget your name. And she wrote down A, 27,633. And I watched fascinated. I said, whoa, what is that? She says, from now on, that's your name. I said, but I don't know how to count. I don't know any numbers. She says, you will learn. Again, I did. She said the numbers many times. I remember the sound of it, not the numbers. I couldn't correspond what I said with a number on my arm. I just heard it. It was like a word to me. I learned it. And that's how we all the kids were like that. And then all kinds of things happened there. But what I want to tell you is that all of a sudden, I get a package. And it's a blue bag, blue. And it has a string around it. And inside outside there's a little piece written, something I can't read. And the woman who took care of us, so she didn't take care of us, she was a couple. She was, again, designated by the Germans. A lot of the horrible, terrible death work was done by Jews under duress. They made their life easier by having committees doing terrible things to each other. So she was in charge of the children. And she read to me, and it said, oh, today is your birthday, your 6th birthday, she said. Happy birthday. I was, 6th birthday? I remembered I was 5.5 or something. This woman told me. Now, I looked, it was the most best gift on the entire earth, a piece of bread. You know, hunger is something you can't describe. I just tell you that we were starving, but you have no idea what the word is. There's no understanding of that word. But somebody once said, not to me, it wasn't mine, to somebody else, were you in Auschwitz? Did you think of God? And the person said, yes, it was a piece of bread. That's what God was, a piece of bread. So she gave me, I took the bread, and I said, oh, I'm not dying yet. I saw kids dying everywhere. My room, the woman, the little girl who slept with me, who was 12, she died of starvation. So I had to pull her in the morning, and put her with all the dead bodies. I knew starvation, but I was going to happen to me because I have insurance. I had the bread, and I was going to, my fantasy as a child was, just as I am dying of starvation, I'll take a bite from that bread. So I hid it for the terrible time when I'll be dying. I hid it inside whatever I was wearing, so nobody should steal it from me. In the middle of the night, gigantic rats came and ate the whole thing. I didn't even eat it. And can't tell you how much my mother suffered. She had to steal a potato to barter it for a piece of bread. And I don't know how she convinced somebody to bring it to me because she knew where I was, but I didn't know where she was, of course. So that it was gone. Let me take you a little quickly. Within, again, timing, I don't know. There was an announcement that we are getting delicious breakfast. Well, I can't tell you. It was like everybody. I had dreams about food. So that's all we thought about. We didn't even think about our parents. We decided we gave up our parents. Nobody had parents. What's a parent? A mother? What? We didn't even talk about that. But we talked about food, and then we're going to get this great breakfast. But we knew what it meant because the barrack next to us, right next door to us, also had children. And they had a breakfast. And they were taken straight to the crematorium after the breakfast. So I knew, but you know what? I didn't care. I want to eat. Who cares what happens after that? So we ate and we got dressed very heavily, and it was very cold. Whatever I had, I got dressed, all the clothing, whatever little thing I had. Walked. It's about a half-hour walk to the crematorium from our barrack, and I hear a voice, and it's must be my mother's because she knows my name, and she's yelling at me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "To the crematorium, to the gas chamber." And there were lots of women there. They were screaming. They must have had children in that same group. I remember turning to the girl next to, we were partners, by the way, two. And I said to her, "Why are they so unhappy? I thought every Jewish child has to go to the crematorium." It was such a normal thing. We got there, we went down to the right. Kids only remember, body language. Went down the steps, came into a room. There was complete gigantic room, cement floor, cement walls, gray, and all the walls had numbers, which I couldn't read. There were all the different numbers with hooks. And there was an announcement, "Get undressed." And don't forget, it was freezing. It was wintertime. It was so cold in Poland during wintertime. So I got undressed, and I couldn't see my number. I didn't know it. So I looked at the person next to me with her clothing and her shoes. I should find mine because I wouldn't be able to recognize the number. We stood there hours, freezing. We cried, some kids cried, and we got very close together, naked. They gave us some kind of rags, like, I don't know what they were, towels or something. They always told people you're taking showers, as if your mind cannot accept that you will go into this particular room that had a little window and you'll never come back. It was a shower. So they gave us something that we should wipe ourselves after we come up from the shower. It never happened. All of a sudden there was an order, which I didn't know. Take them all back. To this day, I have no idea. I have just learned a new theory here that it's possibly that they ran out of gas. I thought it's the Russians were coming. They didn't want them to find all these people. They didn't have time for the gas chamber. I don't know what happened. They took us back, and I didn't. And that's how we made it. The other barrack of children was only taken a few weeks earlier. They never came back. We came back. And then when we walked back, I remember walking back, and then the women were still outside. They were pressed against a barbed wire. Inside, the barbed wires were not electrified. It was the big wire around the whole camp. So they could press against it. And I remember my mother saying, "What happened?" And I was apologetic. I said, "They couldn't do it this time. They'll do it next time." I remember my words. I thought that you're supposed to do it. Within, again, timing, I'm going to squash it so you could have time for questions. My mother, one day we wake up in the morning, and the woman who took care of us disappeared, wasn't there. And the room, our barrack is unlocked. But it is so much noise and so much shooting and so much dog barking, none of us walked out. We were frightened. We could have opened the door, but where were we going? We were safer inside. My mother shows up. I didn't recognize her. And she had time to tell me, "Yes, that's me. I'm your mom." And she took a little bit. And then she said these words to me. "Listen, they are, see outside all that noise? They are gathering people to go to Germany. All of us have to go to Germany. Me, you, all of us. We have to march. Outside," she says, "it's freezing. And look at my feet. They were oozing. They were just terrible." I didn't know who she was, that woman. And she said to me these words. She looked at me. She said, you can survive this march. I won't. And they're going to shoot me. By the way, 95% of people died on that march to Germany. There were 50,000 that started out. Very few people made it. They will shoot me. You'll be left alone on this world. I don't want you to live by yourself. This is not a world for children. I want you to die with me in Auschwitz. And I said, yes. She took my hand. We snuck out. But by then there was chaos, by the way. I can't even describe the chaos outside. She had a plan. She knew this. I didn't. She went into a infirmary for women only, walked in, and she began looking for a corpse, and she found a corpse that she was looking for. It was a woman that it was a women's infirmary, a woman that was still warm because she touched everybody. I said, what is she touching all these corpses? And then she found one and she says, get in. So she uncovered the woman. I got in. She manipulated my body in such a way that I shouldn't be seen. And she told me to breathe into the floor and the mattress because she said, the blanket cannot move. You're not supposed to be seen. Nobody will uncover you but I. I will uncover you. No matter what you hear, I obeyed. I obeyed every word she said from the time I could understand words. I obeyed. I'm lying there. My head is, I still remember that my head is under this dead person's armpit. Her hands are outside. The blanket covers both of us completely. And then I hear boots, and my mother disappears. And I knew she wasn't far away. I knew she wouldn't abandon me. I knew it. I knew it. And she also said to me, she'll be the only one who won't cover me. So of course she's around somewhere. And then I hear the boots. And you know, the Germans, I don't know how the boots were made, but they had something that you could hear it. It wasn't like, it was like a metal sound. And I heard it, and somebody's looking, because this crazy Germans were shooting. The idea was not to leave witnesses. All of Auschwitz was witnesses. There were bodies everywhere. Even the crematorium was half bodies that they didn't get a chance to burn. But they came to the hospital, and they walked around, and they looked at every corpse, and I stopped breathing. And I was wondering how long I could keep my breath. And the German walked on. And I was very quiet. And then it was first screaming, but then it was very quiet. And I smelled smoke. And it's began to enter my lungs. And I said, she told me not to uncover. What can I do? How long can I? And I was just saying, I don't know how long I can breathe the smoke. And all of a sudden she uncovered. She uncovered me, and those were her words in Yiddish. She said to me, they are gone. And I got up. I couldn't find my shoes, by the way. I got up. She took me out of bed, and I watched all the other beds where corpses were being thrown off the beds because people had hidden under the corpses, other women. You know, everybody had this kind of idea, and my mother had a corpse too. So I got out from under my corpse, and all of us started walking to the electrified gates. There were these gigantic gates, and within a short time, the Russians came, and they stopped the electricity, and we could. And that was January 27th, 1945. That I was 6.5, and I consider it sort of my birthday. And thank you.
You just had a birthday September 7th, so we can wish her a real happy birthday
Thank you.
as well. You are remarkable. Your story is remarkable. And I'm going to start with a mixed message. Everyone, how many of you have this book, have read it? You're very fortunate. You can raise your hand. You have this book. We are sold out of Tova's books. But Tova will we'll still be greeting afterwards and perhaps sign an autograph for you. And if you have the book already, but at this point, this is sold out here. But you can get it, and
Amazon.
it yeah, that's right, my copy.
I'm not a
and
bookseller. This is-
and it is one of the most remarkable books I've ever read, and the most remarkable Holocaust story I've ever read, because it is told from the perspective of a child. And as Tova indicated, when you kill the future and you kill the past, a people disappears. So Tova, let's talk a little bit about the things that happen that I would like to elaborate on. One is the strength that you had not to cry. Not to cry.
Well, I told you, my mother's words were law because I had nobody else. My mother and my father. My father was the outside man. He knew what was happening politically, when the Russians, how many transports are being taken, which streets are being taken, what to do. But she was with me, and she knew that unless I took care of myself, she cannot help me. In fact, at one time she took me to a shooting to show me that this woman didn't obey certain simple rules. She didn't give the Gestapo a right of way, or maybe she had eye contact. She didn't do anything. That's what she did. She deserved death for that. And my mother took me to show me. So not to cry, to become invisible, not to be present, because when there was a presence, you were a target.
But you made a remarkable life afterwards. I know it took a long time, and you have the blessing of 4 children and 8 grandchildren. But when did you learn to cry?
Who said I did? I don't cry.
No,
I don't cry.
I know, but
Very little. Maybe at a movie, and that doesn't count.
in the book, there is this beautiful description of when you are talking to children at a school.
Once, yeah. That was the first time I ever spoke. I spoke very late. I was a mother. My daughter was, I have 4 kids. My first daughter was 14, 15, or young, or something like that, because I couldn't talk before that. And my father never talked. My mother wouldn't think of talking. So it was so painful. You couldn't talk. So for the first time when I did speak, I started crying. I still think about that, And the kids were so wonderful. They got up and clapped. So I thought, I could cry. It's not so terrible.
And and part of the journey is, I don't know if people know, but Tova is a therapist and still practicing as a therapist.
Well, you know what helps a lot? A marriage. I fell in love at the age of 12. I grew up very quickly. And my kids and my husband and my unbelievable grandchildren who know the story and are very much involved and are proud Jews. It's interesting. I learned a lot of, can I have a minute?
Yes.
I learned a lot of things here. I met some wonderful people, but I met people who, because of the Holocaust and because of the terrible atrocities, stopped wanting to stop being Jewish in order their families shouldn't suffer. And I get it. But I had the opposite reaction. I said, Hitler wanted me not to be Jewish. I don't know what Jewish was. I began to study Judaism. And I am a very proud Jew. I take a class. I'm 85. Every single day in the morning, I zoom in. Thank God for Zoom, I zoom into a rabbi that I love listening to him, very smart man. And I still do that. My kids, all had a very good Jewish education. We've been to Israel, and of course, Israel is in terrible trouble right now. So I want to ask all of you, no matter what religion you have, to give us a little prayer for the hostages. I've been watching, And so that's what the healing is, not to allow a deranged, mentally sick person destroy who you are.
And that's something that picks up on something that I've asked you before, that I think that people think the war was over, it was done. Can you talk about what happened when you returned to your home?
Well, when I came back, my mother, we were in Auschwitz for a very long time, comparatively for months, because we didn't know what, it was like you don't know what hit you. You got to think, we had to eat. The Russians were there. In the beginning, they were very kind. They changed a little bit afterwards, but they were very kind. And we didn't know where to go. So my mother kept saying, oh, we'll go back to our hometown. You have parents, grandparents, and this, and you have family, and I have brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, and you've been always alone. You will know what a family is. And we went back. There was nobody there. Nobody came back. And the Polish neighbor that my mother was delighted to see said to her in front of me, what are you doing here? I thought Hitler killed you all. And then I tried to go to school. And then the teachers and the kids started calling me dirty Jew and telling me I killed Christ. And I didn't know who Christ was. And I remember I came home and I said, Mom, I'm not going to that school. They say I killed somebody. That was and I never went back to the school in Poland. We were there about 2.5 years. I didn't go to school. That was the reception after the war.
And I'm always amazed that what happened, that there are people like that. But inside the camp, what I was struck with when I read Tova's book was that there were 2 women who were responsible for her getting that piece of bread that the rats ate. And both of those women were prisoners. Both were starving. Your mother suffered because she got that piece of bread for you. But the woman who was starving herself brought you the bread that your mother never would have known if she hadn't,
Right.
and you, of course, wouldn't
Exactly.
have. Could you just speak a little bit about the morality of the prisoners and what they did for one another?
Well, first of all, don't forget I was a child, so I will not pretend that I've seen things, but I read a lot about it. I do know one thing also from being a therapist, that a relationship can in some way help the stress that you feel, the fear. And I met a woman that I knew personally who told me that she had to go on that death march. She was forced, but she was so sick that she knew she would be shot because they had a certain pace they walked. They were in trucks, and the women and the men and women walked next to the trucks, so you could just imagine the pace. And they would shoot anybody. That's how 95% of the people died. She couldn't walk, so 2 people that she hardly knew, each one took her by the arm and dragged her. So it shouldn't be noticed that she can't walk on her own. There were times where, I don't know how many, but there were human kindness that came out that saved people. And I know that.
Yes, and the importance of that cannot be overemphasized. And you say in the book at one time, we could only make bad or worse choices. The Jews were in a position where any choice that they made was either bad or worse, and yet we see how they chose morality in an amoral world.
Can I talk about my mother's choice?
Yes.
My mother made a choice which she couldn't live with after the war. and she talked about it till the end of her life. She when she never stopped talking to me. So while she spoke to me during the war, she spoke to me afterwards in Brooklyn. Every single day, I was high school. I wanted to boyfriends. I wanted to go out. But I didn't. I came home and I listened to her, and she would tell me the story that at one of the places that they were selecting people who should live and who should die, just like that. Very simple, left and right, left and right. She saw her sister in a line for death. And the sister had 2 children. And they didn't have working papers. So they were on the line to die. And we had working papers. So we were on the line to live. So her sister pushed 2 little girls. They were, I think, 4 and 5. And they knew also, they were smart. And they ran to my mom, and they held onto her skirt. And she thought maybe she can save them. The person in front of them, another family, the same thing happened. A sister or a brother, they also had working papers, tried to come to that family. When the German who was making the selection opened up the papers, and he said to the people, "Why are you 5 people? You're supposed to be only 3, something like that. Whom are you trying to save?" He shot them on the spot, the entire family. My mother's turn came, and my father's. And my father had my mother make the decision because it was her nieces. She made them let go of her skirt. And they had to run back to their mother, and they were gassed. All her life, she said, "I could have saved the 2." And I said, "No, you couldn't have. This was the first selection. You had to make the choice. The choice was either all of us would die or the 2 little girls would die." She said, "No, I made the wrong choice." I said, "You made the..." I couldn't convince her. And she died with this terrible guilt of not having saved her 2 little... That's the choices people had to make.
Right, and after you tell that story in the book is when you say, we could only make bad or worse choices. I know that
There were no good choices.
I know some of you have questions too, so if you'll state your question, I'm going to repeat it for Tova.
Oh, when I came?
Yeah.
I came in 1950. I was 11 and a half, almost 12. After being in Germany in a deep displaced people camp. There's so much irony in life. I mean, you all know that. I'm living in Poland, and the Russians, who were our saviors, became our oppressors because Poland became communist, and it was tough to live there, right? So now we had to sneak out, and we snuck out to Germany, of all places. But there we found the American zone in Berlin, and that's how we went to the displaced people camp. And from there we went to America.
Another question? Yes. Oh, okay.
Did both your parents survive?
Yes, my father was in Dachau, which is another terrific look. I mean, I don't know of any family that, at least the nuclear family, was intact because we only had 1 child. You know, everybody who had more than 1 sibling lost at least most of the siblings, and you could only save 1 person. You know, so my father was in Dachau, and Americans freed him, but he was ill, so he stayed quite a bit until he came back. Everybody went back to the hometown. Everybody. It was as if you made an appointment, an unwritten appointment. If you survive, come home. And that's when everybody came. And my mother waited for 3 years. Not a single person came back.
Right. Yeah, you have to, when Tova, Auschwitz was liberated the end of January 1945. Dachau is liberated the end of April. April 29th, 1945.
But he stayed there after April because he couldn't walk.
Right.
So,
and
so it was like
it was
6
forever.
months, 7 months afterwards, after all the wars. My father came back.
The wars don't end. They may stop, but they do not end. Sir, you had a question.
Have you told this story in Poland, and if so, what response did you get?
Have you told the story in Poland? And if so, what response have you gotten?
No, I didn't. But I did go to Poland because I go to, they have like a reunion, let's say, of the survivors. And they come from all over every year. We have it every 2 or 3 years. Less and less people, and since I'm one of the younger ones, but the children and grandchildren come. But my book is translated into Polish. And I want to tell you something. I have a terrible time about Poland. I forgot how can a person forget a language that I spoke till I was 10? I don't know any Polish. It just disappeared. I spoke somewhere, and I mentioned that I was in Auschwitz, Poland. Auschwitz was in Poland, and I didn't mean any political things because I'm not into politics at all. And I got a letter from Polish government somewhere. It said to me, how dare I use Auschwitz and Poland in the same sentence? So I have a lot of feelings about Poland. And I changed my name from the Polish name into a Jewish name.
Yeah, Tola in Polish is red. We talked about
I
Tola.
didn't know that.
Yeah. And Tova means goodness.
No, I just like the name.
I know, but
I didn't know.
I'm saying it, Tova. I'm saying it. When we say Mazel Tov, we mean good luck. Tov is good. Tova means goodness. And she married Meyer Friedman, so goodness was freed.
You know what's wonderful? One more funny thing, sort of. Shana Tova means Happy New Year. That's our expression. And on television, sometimes they say in English Shana Tova during the Jewish holidays. Some television stations. Well, my clients thought they're talking about me. And it was very funny. Oh. They say, "Oh, you're television," and they keep mentioning you. Oh. Sorry, go ahead. The gentleman. Did you ask? Yeah, the guy behind you asked first, but it's up to you. Oh no, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Have you ever spoken? I've been on the March of the Living. Have you ever gone on the March of the Living or spoken to the young high school kids that go on the March of the Living?
My grandson went on the March of the Living. 2 of them went, right? Yeah. I can't remember. Did 2 of them go? Yeah, 2 of my grandkids went. No, but I speak to high school a lot. Yeah, I speak anytime anybody wants to listen because I need witnesses. I look. This place has been fabulous, and I've been listening to the most wonderful stories. And I know if anybody will borrow their stories, they won't like it because it's their property. They work on it. But my story is for everybody. You can have all of it because I need you to be my memory. Memory is the only thing we have. That's the only thing we have. The people are dust, ashes. The children are gone, all that. And if we forget, somebody said that, but it's not my quote, obviously, because it's so famous quote, if we forget, we may repeat. So I don't know if that's true or not.
It is.
But I don't know what else to say, Well, how else can we prevent something so terrible?
And I think that that's a good place to wind up our session with Tova, because we are now all witnesses to what she witnessed, and therefore what I'm hearing you say is we have a responsibility to keep her story and the story alive so that it doesn't.
And it's not my story, remember. It's the story of all those children who were not as lucky.
That's beautiful. So we will do that. Can you tell Tova that you will tell the story?